Welcome back to another episode of Zero Gravity Live, your weightless weekly tech talk, bringing you the best storage for Veeam, powered by Object First. So my name's Matt Price. I'm one of your hosts today. You may notice two familiar faces. Sterling and Anthony couldn't be here today, so we've got Ryan and Casey joining me on the show today. It's going to be an epic show because it's one of my favorite topics. College football season is back. So before we get into this, let us know where in the world you're watching from, home office, geographical location. We'd love to see some comments. If you've got any questions as we go through the show, make sure to drop those in the comments either on LinkedIn, X, or YouTube, and we'll get to those live. Guys, did you watch the Georgia Tech Florida State game that they played all the way over in Ireland this weekend?
Sure did. I mean, it was a great game. So
It was amazing to see. It always seems like it's forever. It takes forever to get back to college football. But I know, Casey, you're a diehard Georgia fan. I'm a Bama fan. So I feel like we just cannot wait until late August rolls around to get back in the saddle.
Oh my gosh. I've had my plans for game day weekends since April. So we're ready to go.
Absolutely. So Ryan, I notice you're wearing a pro jersey. Casey and I are wearing college jerseys.
Yep.
So what's the story, man?
the story is I don't have a college jersey, but I am a big NC State fan. So go ACC versus you SEC fans. I know you had to probably suck it up watching that Georgia Tech Florida State game, but shows that ACC is up on the rise or
Yeah.
down, however you want to look at it, with the number 10 ranked team going down. But I'm also a big Falcons fan. I mean, I don't discriminate, with football. I played it growing up, all the way through school. No college, wasn't that good. But I'm a big fan. Atlanta Falcons, NC State Wolfpack are my go-tos.
So I feel like for our global audience, we have to explain, right? We're not talking about soccer. We're talking about that oblong shaped football that we play here in the States. And, Ryan, you talk about being a Falcons fan. I'm based right here in Atlanta. Alabama is actually where I grew up, and we'll get into this a bit as far as the collegiate background. But Alabama does not have a pro team. So it was college, and you had to pick Alabama or Auburn pretty much the day you were born. So I picked Alabama, no pro team. But now that I'm over here in Atlanta, certainly I'll cheer for the Falcons when they're on TV. And the cool thing is we've sent so many players from Alabama to the NFL. I still get
Right.
to watch some of our old guys like Julio Jones, and some of these guys that went to the Falcons. So what about you, Casey? Do you have a pro team or you die hard college like me?
I'm diehard college. I don't even want to pretend like I know anything about the NFL because I don't. So I grew up in a household of boys, me, my mom, and 3 boys. And so from August to February, they own the TVs. And I really only tuned in for call on Saturdays. And then every other day of the week, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find somewhere to watch something other than football. But yes, that being said, I learned a lot growing up about the sport, and it's just been so fun to watch. But yeah, I'm definitely a college football girl.
Very cool, very cool. So before we get into what's cool in your office, I figured I would kick this off because I've got something that, let me move my camera over here, that my wife actually got me a few years back, and it sits in the corner of my office, and I have a camera I want to show you guys. So this is an actual signed football by actual Alabama players, and it's Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, Devontae Smith, and Bryce Young. Of those four
Wow.
players, 2 of them won the Heisman Trophy. So I'm just waiting on the time that this little guy starts, becoming worth a lot of money, and we'll see what happens. But for right now, it's just chilling over in a case, in my office. So that's my cool, piece of office swag that nobody's ever seen before, because you can see it's kind of in between a green screen and the white wall. So I can never show that on camera, or else the green screen goes crazy.
I
What do you
love
guys
it.
think?
I love it. I feel like so many Alabama fans have the signed footballs. Like, that is just not something to think. I love that, Matt. That's awesome. And you have 4 signatures, so that's pretty good.
Yep. How about you, Casey? What do you got in your office?
Okay, so like I said, grew up with brothers, and a couple Christmases ago, my older brother thought that I thought I knew more about football than I actually did. So he got me a dummy football book 101. It's called Take My Eye Off And I got it because I actually haven't read it, and he would believe all that and all this and that I hadn't read it yet. But it is really, really good book. Like I've read bits and pieces, and it goes through all the different um, naming nomenclature, and there's a glossary, and it talks about basically the whole art of the sport has not nothing, but it's so much around what's happening around the ball, right? Like you're not actually watching the ball. You're watching the creativity of the plays, who's blocking who, the defensive lineman, all the things. So it kind of gets you more excited about watching the game. Like the more I learn about football, the more I like to watch it because of how creative and interesting it can get, the more you know. So highly recommend.
Yeah.
Take your eye off the ball if anyone out there is curious about American football and all of the details of it.
Yeah, it's funny. So I went to Alabama from '03 to '05. My wife graduated in '06, so I was kind of still there from '03 to '06, and that was the years that Mike Shula was coaching. And I was right before Nick Saban stepped in, and it's such an exciting experience to have gone there and get to cheer for Bama, but then see like somebody like Nick Saban step in and really just revamp the program. So obviously last year when we got the news that he retired, it was a little bit of a blow to the old heart. But I'm still looking forward to this Saturday to see how we look. But it should be a great season. So Ryan, what's cool in your office? I hear you got some like
You
blast from the past swag.
I do. I thought I'm thinking back on what I should have shared. I mean, last time I was on, I think it was the March Madness week or right before all that started happening. I shared some Wolfpack red soda cans that had the 1983 national championship commemorative, and they had a miracle run, right? Won the ACC tournament. Ended up making it to the Final Four. So like maybe I should have stepped up with some NC State football gear. Which I have plenty of, as my grandfather played there. But actually was cleaning out the attic this weekend, and I think a lot of us fellas and women in technology, we tend to hold on to things and not let things go. Everybody has their big container of cables and whatever it may be. But something I found in that is this old school Acer netbook that came on the scene. I think around like 2007, 2008, trying to take over the laptop era. Have something smaller, it's easy to travel with, a little bit lightweight. But I think in today's standards, I mean, look at the bezel, on this thing. Look how small that keyboard is. I repurposed it, put Ubuntu on it, and actually, how old this is? It's version 12 of Ubuntu, which. Nice. Wi-Fi is having issues. Haven't been able to get to connect this morning as I kind of was playing around with it. But it's kind of just amazing to think that the technology and how much has changed. That there's more power in, I'll say, a Samsung Galaxy phone or an iPhone these days compared to these netbooks that you could do pretty much the same thing on, and we're all used to it. So. Wish it was something that would have taken off, but I mean, tablets took over. There's just all sorts of reasons why it didn't. But I think. It was a good thing to find and play around with. Maybe I'll give it to the kids, get something to tinker with.
It's wild when you talk about versions and updates and what software version that the hardware supports. Because I've seen that firsthand, with the kids' iPads. We just try to get them the cheapest of the cheap iPad because it's going to get dropped down the stairs, stepped on, all the things. And just last year, theirs quit updating because it was too old to run the latest code. Well, then all these apps start updating to follow the latest code. Well, then all of a sudden the apps they don't support the old software. So it's interesting. You kind of see the end of life when you're not really ready for it, and you get forced to do upgrades. And it's nice to see something like that still hanging on with the thick bezel and all. I remember, Ryan, back in the day when we were doing the Veeam server and lab set up there in that building, we would take one of those little bitty things in there, right, to administer the lab versus your big giant laptop where it was hard to set. So they've definitely got a lot of use cases. So it's cool to see you installing Linux on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to learn it back in the day, but then, you got lost. Other things came up, so.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, let's jump into some of the topics that we kind of wanted to bring up here today. And let's see. Let me just open mine here. I'll just talk about some of this stuff. I feel like it's it's every week we bring up the point that cyber attacks are increasing. I feel like we all know this, but specifically with this show's theme in mind, college football, education systems, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a visual. So this is from comparatech.com, and basically it gives you an interactive graph of all the known ransomware attacks by year. And, right now I've got it only on 2024. And you can see here just in the US alone, how many different attacks that we've had. And if we expanded this globally, you're just going to see this, accelerate exponentially. But, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, if you check all these boxes going all the way back to 2018, I mean, look at all these dots, man. I mean, this is insane. 389 million records affected, since
Wow.
2018. And who knows, what would be tracked if it went to 17 to 16 to 15. But a lot of this goes into, what we talk about when storage and, backup targets were purchased 5, 7 years ago. Security was always a variable, but it wasn't the variable. And you can kind of see that with some of these metrics that we're starting to see on these graphs. And specifically, I dug into this one when it comes down to, US colleges and educational systems. And on average, 500 grand a day that they're down because of ransomware. So, I know they've got sponsors and donors and all that kind of stuff, but that's a huge hit, if any of these educational systems ever get compromised by ransomware. So, I feel like it's never been more important today when we're talking about this whole college theme is to have a playbook. Be ready, be prepared, have a good defense, and know exactly how you're going to recover if something should hit. And the last thing I'll share is on that note, it's really, really critical to have a response playbook. And I pulled this from Fortinet.com. And basically, a response playbook, and there can be several of these, and it depends on what type of incident you're responding to. Is it ransomware? Is it an outage of other means? Is it an insider threat? So having a plan, and I always relate this, especially on today's show, back to football. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? The famous Tyson quote. So having different options on how to respond and having a documented process and having it formalized so everybody knows it. So if the person who created it were to leave, everybody can just pick up with that documented process and move forward, when a company gets hit by one of these attacks. I think that's absolutely critical in today's world. What do you guys think about all this?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I love the playbook term. I think that's awesome. Fits right into the theme. And I think, you know, people with ransomware are creative, just like we're creative in football. So we need to be creative with our defense. And also, I think we need to be simple, right? Just like Oopie. It needs to be quick. It doesn't need to be complicated because the complicated part is the ransomware attack, right? Like the solution needs to be
Mhm.
simple. And so I think that, yeah, be defensive, make it simple. Sometimes the best plays are the easiest ones. So, yeah.
No, I agree, and it kind of spurred a thought in my head. In a previous life, I worked with school cafeteria software and did support. And there is a lot of student information in that system, but it also, looking at the cost, right? That 500,000, per day. Well, a lot of school systems, the free and reduced lunch program is a way for those systems to make money. So if those go down, there's potential, loss there that they're not getting, from the government aids and things like that. So definitely, I mean, I think there has to be that joint solution. One of the things I saw, there wasn't necessarily a cohesive teamwork between, say, the school cafeteria program and IT at that time. I'm sure it's changed since the time I've been in that realm, right? So really have to make sure, the between all, departments, and I think this even beyond schools,
Hmm.
looking at enterprise accounts at all departments, whether it be legal, whether it be IT, whether it be whomever, right? The teamwork has to be there
Yeah.
in order to have a successful, um, running of everything.
The analogy is perfect to me, Ryan, on the whole football theme. It's like offense calling a play, right? You get into the huddle, the quarterback's calling the play, but everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And if you don't have communication, when you look at one of these incident responses, it's going to fail, right? You have to be able to communicate. Everybody needs to know, all the stakeholders need to know what their part of that plan is, and everybody needs to execute.
Exactly.
And that's what I've heard Saban say 100 times, right, in these interviews, right? Do your job, execute one play at a time. So definitely critical. So with that, Ryan, what do you have on the docket to share with us?
Yeah, so I actually got a couple as well to share out there, but I am going to complete something out there I saw in the LinkedIn chat from Mr. Moots out there. I think it's easier for me to say probably than you SEC folks, so I'll complete it for him.
Yep.
But yeah, so I found a couple articles. I found this one very interesting earlier this year, just around how data analytics is changing American football, and really not to dive into it too much. We're talking about all sorts of chips that have been put into the shoulder pads and into the footballs, and how it's gathering all the statistics of the yardage. But now a lot of these data analytics have now moved into predicting, what's going to happen based on, what they've collected. So kind of transition this into true enterprise, right? There's data analytics going on everywhere, right? There's a lot of data that organizations are collecting. And then what we do is we're backup storage. That has to be protected in a way, right? It has to be secure, especially with any personal information that might be part of that analytics, comes into play. And then that kind of transition, really looking into another tab here. Let me go ahead and share this one. It's from LastPass, but one of the things you always hear growing up playing football is defense wins championships, right? Yep. And so their number 2 point in this particular article is have the IT teams be the defensive linemen, right? And you kind of translate that in a couple different ways as well. But if you look at just the IT in general, even the components and what you're putting in place for security, from firewalls to any other components on networking to, what's doing your cybersecurity scans, but what's doing your backup, what's doing the storage. I mean, all those are almost like positions on the table. And for us, right, with Object First UTP, I would see us being more of, say, like a running back holding onto the ball or wide receiver holding the ball, whereas that data mover, being Veeam backup and replication. Right, it's what's managing all that data. It's what's leading everything within the approach to backup. So again, keeping things secure, keeping things going as predicting the football scenarios here with IT. So, but yeah,
I love that. I mean, to me, that's like, you used a perfect analogy of taking the football and separating it away from the rest of the linemen. And, I think about that like segmentation with our zero trust data resiliency model and, minimizing the blast radius. That's one way to do it, right? If the running back's taking the ball and running it in the field, much harder for people to get at it. So love the analogy. What about you, Casey? What are your thoughts?
I'm just loving Ryan's analogies. I'm just like, how am I going to top that?
Yeah.
Just spitballing this morning.
I mean, he found a headline with defensive linemen in it. Kudos to you, Ryan.
I know. I'm like, geez, gosh, he didn't warn me.
My Googling skills are they're on.
I like it.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I love all the football analogies, and so much of football is defense, and that's what we do here. So you're killing it, Ryan. It's great.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely love it as well. That's really the whole goal, is to make sure that data is secure and immutable and always safe for whenever you need to call on it. So with regards to you, Casey, what do you have to share?
Okay, so I'm kind of taking us off the football track for a second, but this is actually funny because you just mentioned segmentation. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully y'all can see that. But the FBI released this 2 weeks ago, and it's basically just an article about what is ransomware and how to protect yourself if you're a victim, how to handle it, all those things. But I want to talk about this section, protect yourself. So there's a lot of great tips here, and they kind of just broke it down to where anyone could read this, whether you're in the tech industry or not, and understand what's going on. But one thing I wanted to highlight, saying secure your backups, make sure they're not connected to the computers and networks they're backing up. And Ryan stole my analogy, and so did Matt. But the segmentation, exactly, making sure that we have people covering all areas and that we're not all in one place connected around the ball. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. That this article is really interesting. I mean, the FBI, that's pretty serious. And I think, if they're releasing something like this, that's pretty normal people terms on ransomware, it's a big deal, is it not? So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think about putting it in terms of football. How many times do you see coaches on the sideline, like covering their mouth when they're talking? They've got the playbook over their face, right? So they're even trying to do the protection there on the sidelines. And that's just for play calling. It's got nothing to do with the lifeblood of your business, which is your critical data. So,
Yeah.
to me that really rings true. And I think, we've talked about this at length on the show before, but failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So I think having the plan, and we talk about the playbook, we talk about the strategies, but if you haven't actually put it into practice and simulated what would happen if you did get compromised, who's to say it's going to work, when the time comes? And to me, that's one of the most underexplored areas that I keep seeing, in the professional world. Everybody talks about data security and having backups, and all that is absolutely true. But testing and being prepared is equally, as true, so that you know what's going to happen and what you're going to do exactly, when that event were to occur.
Yeah. I just thought of this too. You guys ever seen The Blind Side? I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but again, you're going to have a blind side when it comes to your data, right?
Yep.
So making sure you're secure from all angles, that you have someone dedicated to that blind spot, that's what this is talking about. And so, yeah, honestly, I'm like, data and football go really well together, because it's all about the defense and the strategy and having a plan. So, yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Not to be,
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was like, and not to be redundant, but of course we, work in data protection, and redundancy is key with having multiple copies. But right, it is all about planning. And do you think that the plan that goes for game 1 is the same thing as maybe game 2, game 3? Thinking those are different security risks, attacks that may be happening. You have to have a plan for everything that happens, and it's always going to be changing. But as long as you get prepared for something the first time, you'll be prepared for the next time. But you have to be ready for what's going to be new. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's always about planning and always evolving that plan. Be ready for, what's going to be the unpredictable.
You're right. Be ready for the unexpected. And I'll give you a prime example, stuff that just drives me crazy back to college football. How many times do the referees' microphones fail? Or the college, like the headsets fail? And, we watched this last season. I mean, here it is, 2024 going into 2025. We still can't figure out microphones, apparently, right? So it's like, what happens if the coach can't communicate with the quarterback? Because you already called it, Ryan. They've got earpieces, especially in the quarterback's helmet, so the offensive coordinator can call in the play without having to do some crazy hand gestures, right? Like in the old days. What happens when that fails, though? You got to have a plan for that, or you're just going to be scrambling around, just getting run all over. So you always need to prepare and plan for the unexpected and have a plan for that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you gotta go back to the old school signs, with 5 people holding a different grid, and someone's doing hand gestures, and you're trying to throw off the other team. So
the good old days.
I got to show up this quote. Props to you, Dom. I love it. You rise not to the level of the event, but to the level of your prep. Practice is not optional, and hope is not a strategy. I could not agree more. That's pretty much exactly a good conclusion of everything we've been talking about, is be ready for the unexpected, because it's guaranteed to happen. And it's interesting, Ryan, on that topic of just tech in football. Have you seen the new heads up display helmets and all this crazy stuff that they're putting in to some of the NFL players? I mean, it's next level.
It is. I mean, kind of takes you back to some of the old school video games too, right? I mean, the old sports game, like the first person football that, was in the non-Madden football, since it's the only one these days. But I mean, just seeing some of that stuff transition in the real tech, and, the companies that are investing, in this as well. Obviously with the NFL, you see Microsoft all over the place, surfaces all over the sideline. Again, more data being collected, what they're running through. It's insane.
I just, with all the tech, I mean, this whole show since we've started has all been about data security, obviously talking about the best storage for Veeam, but also focusing on emerging technologies and how fast it's evolving. And we've talked about AI before. I can't imagine where college football is going to be in 10 years with some of the technology between the sidelines and the players and the press box, where a lot of the offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators make their calls. It's going to be wild, but I'm along for the ride.
It's only going to
Yeah,
get
I mean, I
more.
think. Oh, go ahead, Casey.
I was saying it's only going to get more exciting. The SEC is growing. We're getting new tech. Things are getting crazy in college
More
football.
games.
Yeah, more games, longer playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI definitely plays big into it as well. There's lots of articles out there how they're looking at like AI for referees. I mean, with AI watching the material that's happening in the game as it plays and helping make those play calls.
Yep.
I mean, just the systems to run that. I mean, got to be powerful. Doing that in real time. I mean, even looking at things like IBM Watson, right? I remember when that first came out for
Yep.
Jeopardy, when they were competing against it, and it was quickly grabbing answers. I mean, it's going to be the same thing. Looking at AI in football. Oh, that's a penalty that the referee missed on the field, but it was picked up by AI watching the game.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's going to be really cool to watch it evolve. It's just exciting tech. I feel like you can plug AI into everything, no matter what the topic or what the sport or what the subject. AI's got to play in there somehow. So you're right. I mean, to actually watch real time footage of the game unfold and make some analytical decisions, misses that the refs didn't call. That's gonna be wild. So we talked about a lot. It's college football season again for us. This is huge. I can't wait to, like we just said, to see more games this year. Now that
Yeah.
we've got the expanded playoff, at least in the college level. So final thoughts. Let's go around the horn. What do you guys want to just close the show with when we talk about data security and college football?
I can go. I just thought of this, but my dad always said defense wins games. So remember that this season with college football and also in your backup strategy.
Awesome, love it, Ryan.
Yep. I mean, I just got to stick with Old Faithful, having a plan. Sticking with it.
Yeah.
For everything from what you're doing, just from initial security to what you're doing for the long term. You got to be ready. Got to have a plan. Get ready for the unexpected.
Yep.
And it all starts with having the right tools for the right job. So.
I totally agree, and to go back to my homeboy Nick Saban, it's the process. It's every day you got to prepare for the unexpected. And, to me, we've got Object First UPI. It's the best storage for Veeam. You've got your backups on an ironclad solution for when that curveball gets thrown or when the penalty gets thrown and you're ready to actually start doing the recovery. But think about it, just having backups is only one small variable to the business at large, right? That's why these preparedness, these playbooks are so critical. When things go sideways, when something unexpected happens, when it goes to overtime, like what's the plan? How do you get DNS back online? How do you get the web servers back online? What order does that stuff need to be restored in? What about forwarding addresses? There's like all these things. And to the point you made earlier, Ryan, it's critical for communication to make sure all that works between the different stakeholders. And I think, my summation and my final closing thoughts is make sure that, and again, we've talked about this, make sure you have a plan, but it's not just a recovery plan. It's a comprehensive, let's get business back online plan that may very well involve more than just the data backup team. Could be the networking team, could be the storage guys. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into how to get things back, on the tracks moving. So lots of good stuff, man. I can't wait to see how this season unfolds. And rest assured, we'll probably do some drops in the weekly shows coming up about did you see the games? Because it's certainly a hot topic here, at least in the Southeast U.S. With that, thank you guys both so much for joining. Appreciate it. Hey to Sterling and Anthony again. We missed you guys, but we'll see you next week. Next week's show, we're going to be doing the hackathon, and we're going to have a couple special guests on to talk all things Veeam Hackathon, how to get registered. So a lot of good content. Make sure you tune in next week, same time, same place. Until then, stay weightless, stay frictionless, stay zero gravity. We'll see you next week, guys.
Yeah.